Today we're in the third chapter of the book of Proverbs. Now, in this particular section again, I'll just say very briefly that we're looking at it in a very unique way. That is, the proverbist is. Most of the time when we think about Proverbs, we think about short sentences that has a great meaning to it. And that generally is what a proverb is. But Proverbs can be lengthened out, and in the first 9 chapters, that is what he's doing. He will take maybe 3 or 4 verses to get a thought across. Later on, starting in chapter 10, why every verse will have an impact, it'll have some kind of a meaning. But here in the first 9 chapters, why he's talking in this way. Now here's the unique thing about it, and that is that Solomon is really not talking from himself. He's going to start out today, and in other chapters here, as you can take a look at, he says, "My son," and then he gives some instruction. Now this is not Solomon saying, "My son," and talking to his own child. This is wisdom that's talking. So let's get that firmly fixed in our mind, and it'll help us understand many of the statements that are made in these chapters. And that is that if you could personalize wisdom, if you could take wisdom and make an individual out of it, and then this individual that is composed of wisdom could be talking to you, just stop to think what that would mean. If you could glean all the wisdom there is in the world, impact it in the mind of, let's say, a human being, and then that human being with all that wisdom begins to talk and say, now here is what wisdom really is. So it's personalizing wisdom. So as he starts out, that's what he's going to say here. So he says, "My son, forget not my law." So right at the very beginning, let's keep in mind that this is wisdom saying, "My son, forget not my law." Don't forget the law of wisdom. When wisdom, speaks, don't forget the law that I give to you. Now, all the way through this chapter, that's what it's going to be talking about. It's going to be talking about wisdom speaking to us and telling us to do certain things. So let's continue on, because he's going to tell us now what we can glean from this wisdom. He's talked to us in the first 2 chapters, told us many, many things. We're not going to go over it again, but in chapter 3, we're going to see the benefits now. So we might say this. If we were going to study chapter 3 in this way, we could say, okay, now I'm getting ready to either listen to common, ordinary, foolish people, or I'm going to listen to wisdom. I'm going to glean out all the wisdom there is, and I'm going to act in the realm of wisdom. What's the difference? What benefit is it to me to act with wisdom rather than just acting in a normal, common sense of everyday living? That's what chapter 3 really is going to tell us about. We're going to see what we get in here. So he starts out now and he says, "My son, forget not my law, but let thy heart keep my commandments." Now here is going to be the benefit if we put wisdom in our minds and keep what it teaches us. "For length of days and years of life and peace will they add to thee." So you could stop and you could think about this, and it's an awesome statement. That is, what will life with wisdom give you that life without wisdom won't give you? Well, number one, life with wisdom will prolong your days. That's how you can, if you say, I want to live a good long life, well then, life with wisdom is the way to do it. Live the way wisdom would tell you. Because he said, if you do that, then wisdom will prolong your life. Now, if you just look out among us in America today or any other country, and you look at people who live the happy life, go out, do whatever they want to do, live the wild life, the good life, going to have lots of fun. And then you take the people that live according to wisdom, and they conduct their life not in just a party life that gives them a lot of fun, but they conduct their life according to wisdom, the way they should financially, and the way they should in their moral life, and so forth and so on. As you look at them, which one lives the longest? See? As you look out there, you see which one lives the longest. And when you hear of people dying in their 30s, 20s, 30s, there, now there are people who are good people, live good, clean lives, and they die like that. But if you take the next 100 people that you hear on TV, and they died in their 20s or 30s, what comes to your mind? What is it that comes to everybody's mind? You see? Is it, oh, this is a movie star, and they died. Boy, I bet you that was one of those clean living persons. Is that what comes to your mind? Or are drugs one of the first things, or alcohol, and on down the line you see that comes. This right here is saying, if you want to live a long life, then you learn what wisdom really is and live that way. Then he says, not only that, he said, and peace will they add to thee. While you're living this long life, you can live a life of peace. So now you take that, that's all that you had, and you say, okay, now here it is, I found the secret to living a long life, and this long life will be one of peace rather than conflict. I won't always be in trouble. I won't always have somebody after me. It'll be a life of peace. You would say, well, how much better can life on this earth get than to have that? So that's what he's saying. He says, that is what you will find if you live according to wisdom. Then he says, let not kindness and truth forsake thee. So as you're going through living in wisdom, don't ever come to the conclusion that you can let kindness and truth forsake thee. Don't ever get yourself in a situation where you're coming down and you say, okay, what should I do? And it comes to your mind, I'm going to do this thing which is not a kind thing to do. In fact, it's a bad thing to do. It's a hurtful thing to do. But it'll give me a lot of pleasure to be able to do this. Or I may have to lie a little bit. I may have to not tell the truth in this, but it'll get me out of trouble. Now, don't ever get yourself in that way. He said, just keep in mind, if you want to live a long, happy, peaceful life, you make sure that kindness and truth never forsake you, that you always act in a kind way and in a truthful way. Now, with all these Proverbs, I guess we could go to other places in the Bible and we could get 100 verses probably that would apply to almost any one of them. But let me ask you this. If you find yourself in a situation to where you have to react in some way, and you want to act in a bad way, down here sits Jack and he's done something bad to me. He's cheated me. He's lied about me. I'd like to pay him back. See? Now, can you think of another verse in the Bible that I could go to that will help me always make the right decision? Because right now I'm worked up. Right now I'm mad at Jack. I just dearly love to harm him in some way. Now, where's another verse in the Bible that I could go to and put it into practice, and I'll make the right decision toward Jack? Got any idea? There really is one verse that guides you in doing this. Now, whatever you're going to do to Jack, make sure it's what you would have somebody else to do to you. So whatever you would that other people do to you, you turn around and you do it to them. So now, how would I want people to treat me if I were in that situation? See? And then I think about it, and I treat Jack exactly that way. Don't you worry, I'll be right. I'll be right. That's what the Lord said. He said, that's how you can tell. That's one of those statements that is just a statement that will show you how to conduct yourself every time. So, make sure that you never get off of the track in that way. Then he says, now take these things and bind them about their neck, write them upon the table of thy heart, and so shalt thou find favor and good understanding in the sight of God and man. So if I'll take these things, what's the purpose of saying, bind them about your neck, write them on your heart, some places put them across your forehead, make them a part of you? What's the idea that he's trying to get us to see? And that is, don't ever go out without these things. Make sure these things are part of your personality, part of your character. Now, we get up every morning and we put on our clothing. And if somebody came along and said, look, we're in a hurry today, why don't you just forget your clothes? Let's run on downtown, see? Why, you would no more think of that than anything. You'd what? But how many of us would make sure that we put on truth and kindness the same way we would put on our clothes? We're not going to be leaving our bedroom in the morning until we make sure that our attitude is right. We're going to go out and meet the world today. And when I meet Jack here, who has done me this great harm, how am I going to react to Jack? Well, I'd like to punch him in the nose. Don't leave the bedroom yet, Lowell. Back up a little bit. You're not ready to go out and meet the world. Make sure you say, well, okay, what I'm going to do to Jack, I'd really like to see him suffer. Really like to see him suffer. But I'm going to make sure that I treat him the same way I'd want him to treat me if I were in his shoes. And so if I can go out that way, then I've wrapped it around my neck, bind it upon there. So he said, you do this, and then here's your reward. You will find favor and good understanding in the sight of God and man. So if you'll do these things, you're going to find good understanding, a good reputation, good ideas, good thoughts in the sight of God and man. So if we say, well, excuse me, I want long life. I have to follow wisdom if I do that. I want a peaceful life. I have to follow wisdom if I want that. And then I would like for people to like me. Any of you just kind of so cantankerous that you don't want anybody to like you? So I'd like for people to like me. Okay, if I like for people to like me, there's a certain way I have to live. And I have to live according to wisdom. I have to live with kindness and truth. I have to bind these things around my neck. And if I will live that kind of life, people will like me. Okay? And so he's giving us the secrets of life. That's what I say here in chapter 3. It's a chapter that tells us what we will benefit if we follow wisdom. Now, in verse 5, he gives us another thing that we must do. If you're really going to be wise, trust in Jehovah with all thy heart, and lean not upon thine own understanding, and in all thy ways acknowledge him, and he will direct thy paths. Be not wise in thine own eyes, fear Jehovah, and depart from evil. Now, that's a big thing. It's a real easy thing to talk about. It's one of those things in religious teaching that we like to talk about, but it's really hard to live. Really, really, truly hard to live. Now, trust in Jehovah. Any controversy about that, see? Well, nobody's going to say, oh, no, I don't think we should trust in Jehovah. No, we're all going to say, oh, yes, yes, trust in Jehovah. Now, I don't remember a day in my life since I became a Christian that I haven't trusted in Jehovah. I just can't remember one. Not even one day that I haven't trusted in Jehovah. And so you'd say, well, Lowell, that's quite a bragging feat you've got. Yeah, that's not one day. But here's my problem. I've had too many days of not doing this. What does this say? It says, trust in Jehovah with all thy heart. There's where I've made my mistake. That is, I haven't trusted him with all my heart. Oh yeah, we all get up and we trust him. Yeah, I trust in Jehovah. God will take care of me. God will watch over me. And so we have about that much trust. Then we go out into life and we start making decisions and doing various things. And do we trust him with all of our heart? Or do we trust him only up to a certain point? And we look at him and we say, okay, here's the way God has guided me. Now I'm going to trust him to take care of me. I'm going to trust him in helping me make decisions. I'm going to trust him with all my heart. My whole heart is going to be set upon trusting God. Then I go out and I see if I do certain things which might not be right, they might take me away from this or that, but it would certainly make me a lot more money. And so I start seeing how I could gain financially or gain in some other way. And so I take my own understanding. I look at it and I say, okay, here's the way I think we should do it, instead of trusting in Jehovah with all my heart. Now, that really is a big key, is to be able to say, I put my trust in him, I'm going to live for him, and whatever happens, I will accept it as God's will. I'll do the best I can. I'm going to make the right decisions the very best way that I can possibly do it. I'm going to treat other people like I would have them to treat me. I'm going to bind truth around my neck. I'm not going to get involved in some kind of a situation to where it's going to put me in a rather nebulous area of whether I'm doing right or whether I'm doing wrong. I'm going to pray to God, and I'm going out, and I'm going to make the best decisions I can. And if God says no, I'm not going to try to override him. I'll bet you if I ask you, have you ever prayed to God about a decision and you prayed fervently? It's a big decision. Maybe it's a decision like moving, or a decision like changing jobs, or it's a big decision. And you prayed to God. And then something happens and you don't get what you wanted. And you went ahead and you overrode him anyway. See, that's my problem. It's not I don't trust in Jehovah. It's do I trust him with all my heart. And of course, that's what God calls for all the way through the Bible. Think if we were put in Abraham's shoes, would I pass that test? You know what I can see myself doing? Honestly, I can see myself, if I were put in Abraham's shoes, and God told me, Lowell, go sacrifice your son, thine only son, and gave me 3 days to walk over there to do it. I can see myself saying, I'll do it, Lord. I love you. I'll do it. And I'd take off. I really believe I would. I believe I'd take right off of that mountain. But then I believe that I would start saying, I wonder what God meant when he said, sacrifice your son. Could he have meant, maybe he meant, surely he didn't mean, no, I think here's what he meant. And so you see me hobbling along like that. By the time I got to the base of that mountain, I don't think you would have found a man that would have turned around and says, son, pick up the wood and we're going to the top. That's trusting in Jehovah with all your heart. Now, you go throughout the Bible, how much faith, how much trust does God ask us in the Old Testament and in the New? He gives us examples in the Old to show us how to conduct ourselves in the New, but how much trust are we supposed to put in Him? So this is a big statement. It's the reason I'm harping on it. It's so easy to read over. Trust in Jehovah with all thy heart, and then we go ahead. No, trust in Jehovah with all thy heart. Make sure you put all your trust in Him, and lean not upon thine own understanding. Don't ever try to override Him. Don't ever try to say, I know, and let your wisdom override His. He says, don't be wise in your own eyes. Now, later on, he's going to talk about this. It's so important, he's going to bring it up 2 or 3 more times, about being wise in your own eyes, that you determine you know what is best, and that's what you're going to do. Now, if we stopped and thought just a minute, suppose I gave you a paper, handed out. We're always taking polls at this time, especially in election year. And if I were to ask you, how many people do you think live in this world that's ever had a problem being wise in their own eyes? What would your answer be? Is there anybody in here that would be foolish enough to say, well, 99%, but there's probably 1%? No. It's you'd say, well, this is a problem everybody has. And what you have to do is you have to override it. And it takes a lot of effort to be able to override this being wise in your own eyes. So he said, fear Jehovah and depart from evil, and it will be health to thy navel and marrow to thy bones. So now then we add one more thing. Fear Jehovah. Fear Him. It seemed to me like I remember another statement that says something about this is a whole duty of man. And it says something about fear, doesn't it? See, the whole duty of man. Fear Jehovah and keep His commandments. And this is the whole duty of man. Pretty well summarizes it. You see, we're dealing with facts of wisdom here. We're dealing with things that will take you through life. A minute ago, I mentioned, the Lord gave me the formula so that I always carry with me, wherever I am, I carry with me that formula so I know how to treat the other person. That's really something. I know how to treat another person who has mistreated me. And you say, wow, how do you know how to treat a person who's mistreated you? Well, you treat them like you'd have them to treat you. You put yourself in their shoes. You give them the latitude that you'd want them to give you. You always have that with you. Now, here's another thing. Fear Jehovah and keep His commandments, and that's all there is to it. Now, what all does that encompass? See, if you fear God, you will keep His commandments. See, you will keep His commandments. And what else is there other than having the proper aspect and attitude toward God and in keeping His commandments? That's what the book of Proverbs here is telling us. It's trying to put life in the proper perspective. It's trying to get us to kind of back up a little bit in this hurried life, rushing through, getting up early in the morning, fighting the traffic, fighting the job, coming home, constantly back and forth, fighting how we're going to pay the bills, the old rat race that we're in. It's trying to just stop and back us up a little bit and say, you know, life is really not made of the traffic situation. That's not what life is made of. Life isn't made of paying your bills when you get your wages cut. Life is more than that. Life is more than that. Life isn't made up of living where you want to live or having the house you want to have. Life is more than that. And it makes us stop and back up and take a look and see, okay, here's what life really is made of. And so these are the things that he gives us here, to live in this realm of wisdom in this way. Now, in verse 9, he said, now here's something else that we're to do. Honor Jehovah with all thy substance, and with the first fruits of thine increase. So shall thy barns be filled with plenty, and thy vats shall overflow with new wine. So now, honor Jehovah with all of your increase, all of your substance. Everything you have, you honor Jehovah with. You're going to give to him with the first fruits of thine increase. He taught the Old Testament people, here's what I want you to do. I want you to give 10% back to God here of all of your increase. And you do that first before you take anything. You make sure that you honor Jehovah. That you stop and you say, okay, I'm going to show honor to my God, and I'm going to honor him in the increase that I have. Now, that's a hard thing to do. Are we beginning to see that really life is made up of simplest things in the world, but they're the hardest things in the world to do? See? So honor him with all thine increase. Wow. I need to put Jehovah first and make sure I honor him. Now he said, if you will do this, then your vats shall overflow with new wine. Your barns are going to be filled with plenty. Now, there's two ways of looking at this. There's a philosophy that your TV preachers have, and it's a prosperity religion. And they'll pick out verses like this and other verses and say, see, the Lord says that you honor him with your increase, and then he'll have your barns to overflow. So what you do is that you dig down in your billfold and you send me the first big chunk of your money. And so you send me and you give until it hurts, and the Lord will pay you back. See, he'll make sure that your barns overflow. So then we got Jack again's the guy I'm picking on today. Jack says, boy, I need more money. And so he said, well, I can barely make it. I'm on fixed income. And the economy is rising, and I can barely make it. Well, do you know what their answer is to Jack? If you've heard him preach, you know. It may look that way, Jack, but here's what you do. You take out that money, take out the rent money, send it to me. And then the Lord will see that you get paid back 10 times that amount. So Jack goes in, and he writes out me a big check so he can't pay his rent. Now, stop. Why is Jack doing that? See, in this example, why is he doing that? He's doing that for himself, isn't he? Jack has found a good way of making money for himself. He's not honoring the Lord. He's honoring him. He said, oh boy, if I give this, see, and then I can get back 10 times that much. And he's honoring himself. No, that's not what this is talking about. It's not saying, you do this, then I'll do that. What it's saying is, if you want to live a wise life, you want to live the way you should live all the way through, you do all these things that wisdom has told you to do, and then you honor Jehovah with all your substance. You make sure that you honor him and you give when you should be giving. You do what you should be doing with your physical accumulations, and the Lord will bless you. See, the Lord will bless you under those circumstances. He's not saying the Lord will bless you if you say, oh, I need $1,000, so I believe I'll give $100 to the Lord. See? And then the Lord will send me 10 times that much. All these verses can be twisted around. But as you read them, they're all just very, very full of wisdom that's in here. So he says, make sure that you honor him then in this way. Then there's another thing here that is really a big thing. It'd take hours to cover. We have 2 minutes. So what does he say? He says, my son, despise not the chastening of the Jehovah, neither be wary of his reproof. For whom the Lord loveth, he reproveth, even as a father the son of whom he delighteth. Now you say, wait a minute, I think I've heard that over in the New Testament. Well, yeah, there's a whole chapter on it. A whole chapter of Hebrews 12. And it's quoted, this right in here. And that is, the Hebrew writer goes back and pulls this out and quotes it, because this is full of wisdom. And here the wisdom is, God will chasten you. Now that word chasten literally means instruct or raising up a child. When somebody brings a little child home from the hospital, what's their job for the next, you name it, 18, 20 years? What's their job? Well, their job is this word right here. Their job is to chasten. What does it mean? It means that you are to raise that child the way a child should be raised. Now, I'm going to give you a new word that you've never heard, because it's never been, there's no such thing as this word. But I won't make it up. This word right in here is childing. Suppose that I were to ask, how many of you people are childing? You would say, what do you mean by that? If I say, how many of you people are working? You would know. You'd raise your hand. Well, how many of you are childing? What does childing mean? It means doing the same thing to a child that you do at work. What do you do at work? You do what you're supposed to do in your work. That's what working is. You're doing what you're supposed to do. Now, when you're a child, what do? You're raising the child the way the child needs to be raised. There's times when the child needs to be praised, the child needs to be disciplined, the child needs this, the child needs that, the child needs a toy, the child needs to have a toy taken away. All of that is childing. That's what this word means. So now, that's what God does to us. When God is instructing us, when he's saying, no, you can't have this, I'm taking this away, when he's disciplining us, how are we to accept the discipline in this life? When we don't get our way, well, despise not the chastening of the Lord. Don't get mad at it. Don't get bitter. Why? Because the Lord chastens whom he loveth. So if God really loves you, get ready, you're going to have some problems in life. He's going to take some toys away from you. He's going to say, no, you can't do this, and then he's going to say, you have to do this over here. So if you want to live a happy life, then get ready to accept God's instruction, God's guidance as he gives it to you in this life. Okay, there's where we stop today.